You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Hi folks, Teresa Tang here. The countdown is on to a new year, and for Malaysians, the countdown is also on to a new electric rail service, a service that some have said could revolutionize transport in the country. Now, if you have never been to Malaysia, Johor Bahru is the country's southernmost city. It sits on the tip of the Malay Peninsula. It's got food, shopping, and it's a really popular spot for Singaporeans because it's just across the border. Capital Kuala Lumpur lies on the west central part of the peninsula. Travel between the two hubs can be between 5 to 6 hours by bus, really depending on traffic and how many breaks you take. But an extension of the electric rail system could cut travel time between JB and KL in half. Besides saving time, it could also save travelers money. What's not to like, right? Critics, though, say they aren't so sure the project will meet its completion target of the end of the year and that it's too little too late. Still, the excitement and the expectations are very real. CNA's JB correspondent Amir Yusof has been on the ground, and he's been on the trains, and he joins me now. Hey, Amir, good to see you.
Hi, Teresa. Thank you for having me.
I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you this, but I've lived in Singapore for a decade and I've only traveled to KL a handful of times. And it's embarrassing because I have friends who go away there for weekends and it's just so easy for them to do that. But for me, in my mind, I feel like the hassle of going to the airport, the travel time, it's kind of off-putting. I'd rather go somewhere further, than just KL. Can you tell our listeners what commuting between JB and KL has traditionally been like?
Sure, Teresa. Just to share from my own experience growing up, I remember as a child taking the sleeper train from Singapore to KL with my family. And that experience is so vivid because I remember sleeping on a narrow double-decker bed on a diesel train, the air being so stuffy, falling asleep after what seemed like hours and waking up to only realize that the journey is only halfway. So I'm glad that after decades on, the train journey is set to be more efficient. Of course, there are alternatives of travel between JB and KL, like buses, taxi, flights, and there are pros and cons for each of these modes of transport. But from what we know for sure is that travel between JB and KL is only going to get more popular, be it for tourists, business travelers, or even local commuters, because both these cities are becoming increasingly cosmopolitan and dense.
There are lots of comments on your YouTube story. Some people, like you, they remember back in the day those sleeper trains to get to their destination. Others welcoming this idea because they say they think it would be safer compared to, say, the bus, based on all the reports of crashes you hear on the roads. Not to mention, it could be more environmentally friendly. How much of a game changer would this JB-KL extension be?
So the electric train service, or ETS, is no doubt a game changer for rail travel in Malaysia. It is set to travel at a maximum speed of 160 kilometers per hour. The current diesel train only travels about maximum of 120. And the service is able to make 22 trips a day with around 350 seats each train. And most importantly, this is set to halve the travel time between JB and KL from currently 6 to 7 hours by diesel train to 3.5 hours to 4 hours by the ETS. So this makes rail now a truly viable option for travelers in comparison with flying or taking buses. Now, one factor that has perhaps flown under the radar is how environmentally friendly the ETS is. Electric trains consume significantly less power and emit significantly less carbon per passenger than other modes of transport, like flying or driving. So it is the cleanest and most energy-efficient way to travel. I spoke to the acting Chief Executive Officer of KTMB, Ahmad Nizam Muhammad Amin, the national rail operator overseeing management of this rail line. And this is what he had to say about the ETS.
If we choose other modes like flying, the journey to the airport is further and the wait time is longer. In contrast, taking the train, even though the travel time is slightly longer than flying, the station locations are directly focused on the city centre. So to go to Kuala Lumpur, we arrive directly at KL Central without a long trip to the airport. In terms of cost, it is more economical compared to flying because we save on ticket prices. Compared to driving, we save time, so I think it's an attractive choice for users to choose to travel by train.
Now, this electric rail service, it brings passengers to many other destinations besides just JB and KL as well. We're talking Ipoh, Butterworth, and Penang. And, proponents say, look, this is not just a train ride. It's about showcasing what Malaysia has to offer. And it's also benefiting locals while doing that.
Indeed, that's spot on, Teresa. Well, we are interested with how rail travel can be reduced between the key cities like Johor Bahru and Kuala Lumpur. It also improves accessibility to satellite towns along the route, such as Seremban in Negeri Sembilan, Alostar in Kedah, and even the durian towns of Johor, like Kluang and Segamat. With the ETS, these towns are already seeing higher tourist footfall. And with the line set to be extended to Johor Bahru by the end of this year, locals are expecting even more visitors in the coming months and years. It serves as an opportunity for them to showcase their attractions and earn more tourist dollar, be it shopping in Seremban or sampling coffee in Kluang. Commenting on this, let's hear from Nazifa Muhammad Noor, a food vendor in Segamat.
There is an increase in visitors and also an increase in income. On weekends, this food court is full of customers from outside Segamat. Perhaps more visitors will come to Segamat. This will have a positive impact on local businesses. More tourists could visit to enjoy the attractions here.
Not everyone's celebrating just yet. There are critics, and those critics are reserving their praise because they say the success of this extension, it really depends on integration, how well it's integrated with other rail projects. Many of us on both sides of the border, we followed the saga of the KL Singapore high-speed rail project. That was terminated after a lot of hoopla. Amir, how much will this service complement other rail services in the country?
Yes, I think it's pivotal for the ETS to be linked with the other lines for it to be convenient for travelers. We have seen how this is played out positively in Penang, for example, where the ETS Butterworth station and the Penang Central Rail Station on the LRT line within the same building. For the upcoming line extension in Johor Bahru, analysts told me that it is pivotal, that the ETS at JB Central is accessible for travelers coming in from Singapore by the RTS link, as well as the proposed elevated ART system, the upcoming public rail transport in Johor. And thankfully, authorities have indicated that this will be accommodated. We spoke to KTM Acting Chief Ahmad Niza Muhammad Amin about plans to improve connectivity between the rail lines in Johor Bahru. And this is what he told us.
Jadi untuk perkhidmatan RTS apabila dia dibuka nanti memang
When the Rapid Transit System or RTS is opened later, the ETS users will be able to connect to the RTS comfortably because they can use a sheltered walkway, and there'll even be travelators and lifts for those who are carrying luggage. The integration is planned well and will be executed.
How excited Malaysians are about this JBKL extension. I was looking at the comments on your YouTube story, and some are skeptical, right? They say this has taken way too long to get off the ground, and a 3.5-hour commute isn't really that much of a time saver. And even if it does get up and running, that tickets are going to be a challenge because everyone's going to want to ride on it.
Yeah, so on the one hand, there are travelers who are pessimistic. Now, you have to understand that Malaysians are used to driving to get around. Each household typically own 2 cars, and this is partly because how relatively cheap petrol is. And getting people to swap out the convenience of driving to taking rail or ETS is not going to be easy. But I think they can still be persuaded because cars are subjected to traffic jams along the north-south highway. And if you take the train, there's no need for drivers to be stressed out by traffic and congestion. I think for travelers who are used to taking buses and flights, the ETS is an extremely competitive option. We compared the prices and saw how ETS tickets can be half of flight tickets in some instances. And it's an extremely premium and more comfortable way to travel as compared to taking the bus. We spoke to a commuter, Ilango Sandaran, who works in Singapore. He already is using the ETS from Segamat to get home to Penang. And this is what he had to say.
dalam kos tu ada apa? Makan ada, toilet ada.
On the train, there is food, a toilet, you can relax as well. If it's a bus, sitting for a long time can be uncomfortable too. If we use the electric train service, we can walk and enjoy the view too.
There are rumors, though, Amir, that the JBKL service it's not going to be operational by the end of this year, which is what officials have been saying, partly because of construction delays. What do you think? Will the service begin on time?
Teresa, that's really not an easy question to answer. Because construction delays for rail projects, unfortunately, seems to be the norm rather than an exception in Malaysia. We have seen similar issues with the KLIA Aerotrain, the Penang LRT, and many other rail projects. Even this ETS line was set to be completed in October, according to reports, but they fell short of the target as well. There have been setbacks relating to electrical supply and land acquisition, according to local media reports. So I wouldn't put any money on the final extension to Johor Bahru being completed by the end of this year. But I think travelers can be cautiously optimistic. When drivers drive to Johor Bahru from the north, we can see the infrastructure in place for the ETS extension. Construction work is ongoing. And indeed, the Transport Minister has stressed that it will be done by the end of this year. I think all in all, regardless of when it will be completed, this project is so keenly anticipated. And the hope is that the extension to the line is completed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close to December, so we will know soon enough if those promises made will be promises kept. Really appreciate this. Thanks for coming on, Amir.
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate it.
And you can find this story and Amir's other reports on CNA.Asia and YouTube as well. Also, don't forget, catch the TV episode of CNA Correspondent every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. The team behind this episode is Clara Ong, Tiffany Ung, Junaini Johari, Pei Ning Ho, Nat Fitalvero, and Craig Dale. Join me again next week. Bye for now.